Welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlson. Shawn, we have a little bit to talk about today. I thought it was going to be all Lions, and it's going to be mostly Lions. But there was some news out of Ann Arbor last night, whatever night that
out of
was.
LA, really.
Yeah, I guess it's now out of LA. Yeah, LA can have Jim Harbaugh. He's their problem now, right?
He's an LA guy.
Yeah, he did coach there. Well, it was San Diego, actually.
Close enough.
Yeah, to you, it's all the same.
I'm
right?
from Phoenix, so yeah.
It's one big, huge area. All right, look, we're going to get into the 49ers and Lions matchup with Messi title game this Sunday out in Santa Clara, California. Hey, at the AP, the AP is a stickler for date lines, and we're gonna go ahead and say where the actual stadium is. Is that okay with you?
Nobody knows where Santa Clara is, but sure, yeah, Santa Clara.
Okay, we're not going to worry about facts on this half of the podcast over here. We'll get to that in just a second, but just your initial thoughts on Jim Harbaugh leaving the University of Michigan, a month after he wins the national championship, less than a month, probably a few weeks after he wins the national championship, taking the job as head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, he was, this seemed like it was always going to happen, right? At some point, even if it wasn't this year, maybe down the road, that relationship was complicated with the university.
Like ours.
Yeah. Well, we don't have one with the university. You mean you and me?
Complicated. Yeah,
it's complicated.
Yeah.
And what we kept hearing is that he really wants to try to, not be the little brother anymore and matches his older brother John and get a Super Bowl. And he made a joke about I can be at the adults table now because he got his first title. He's a competitive guy. It makes sense. There's a lot of stuff potentially coming down the pike at Michigan. And, overall, I think he just, it hasn't been the easiest, smoothest ride at Michigan in 9 years for him, even though it ultimately, give him a lot of credit, got to the top there, won it. And now he's, on to something else. And sometimes that's, you can't tell what's in somebody's heart, but obviously, being wanted, being courted, being wooed. And maybe this is ultimately, he gets to focus on football. He doesn't have to worry about fundraising and donors and administrators and presidents and athletic directors, all this stuff, right? He gets to do the business of what he does, is football, not having to worry about the extracurricular stuff, the NIL. So it makes sense in a lot of ways. It's unfortunate because, we just didn't get to enjoy the national championship. The fans didn't get to enjoy the national championship because right away it was on, it seemed like he was on the interview circuit. So you'd always just felt like, is he staying? Is he going? And now we have our answer. And were you surprised by it, or what were your thoughts about this?
No, I'm not surprised by it at all. I mean, and I don't think he was running from anything. He wanted to go to Minnesota 2 years ago. They just didn't want him. He didn't do very well in the interview. And he just made his first college football playoff at that point. He wouldn't try to run anything from them. He's always wanted to do this. It's like I remember when John...
But he also, don't forget, that was the year where he was asked to take the pay cut. And then he redeemed himself, and he's like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah, but the year before, he came from the NFL. I don't understand why we act like... It's like when John Beeline left. People were shocked. They had an idea. No, he's a coach. He was an innovative coach, and a particular kind of coach. He wanted to see if it would work at the highest level. And that's how most of these guys are. Right. I mean, look, I understand Nick Saban. We're going to always think of him Alabama. I know he won a title at LSU, and he's a classic college coach. There's no way he would have gone to Alabama if he'd succeeded in Miami.
Right.
He who wanted to be an NFL coach, right? I mean, that was his ultimate dream. He went back. He realized maybe it was better for him at college. Maybe Harbaugh will do that, but I doubt it. He was 44-19 in San Francisco or whatever it was. And I wrote about this, and we each wrote about it, and I wrote about it. My column, it's football. It's pure football now.
Yeah.
That's what it is. None of the other maybe you have to go make an appearance here or there, whatever, in the community.
Oh.
But minimal compared to meeting with boosters and then not to mention, the recruiting, the NIL, the portal, all the transfer portal, all that kind of stuff. He wants to go see if what he's learned to this point, because he's changed a lot. He still fundamentally runs a program the way he's going to run a program, but he's evolved and adapted a lot. And he's a very curious soul, which I've always felt was sort of underrated about him. He's constantly changing. He brought in an older high school coach a few years ago as sort of a mentor and counselor who said, hey, okay, this guy's doing this over there. Why don't you go tell him he's doing a good job? Or this guy, don't know, he's not going to have, whatever. He's he was open. I mean, all this success, and he brings a guy that's helped me communicate better. So and I wrote this too. He's got an ego. We all have egos, but he never had that kind of ego. He was never too proud to say, "Hey, I need help."
Right. Yeah.
And I think that makes him a great coach. Absolutely. I think Dan Campbell's got some of that in him.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's one thing you can always say about Harbaugh is, he's trying to get any advantage he can, and that includes introspection and knowing what are your weaknesses. How can I get better here? How can I attack this day with enthusiasm unknown to mankind, all that stuff. And that is really him. I mean, he is a great coach for that reason. I think that's why it will translate to the NFL, because the NFL and college are different animals. Okay. There's just a different level of commitment, professionalism, but he's, like you said, he's been there before, got to the Super Bowl, got the most out of Colin Kaepernick, learned something about probably the quarterback, battle or whatever it was, going through different guys. Maybe he learned something about working with management, working with a general manager, working with ownership. There's a different complexity there than it's complex. It's different than college. And sometimes one suits you better than the other, right? So I would expect him to have success with the Chargers. The question is, the Chargers, I've always just said that I don't like the Chargers because just they have historically not had a very good
well, you don't like anything.
Strength.
So how is that any different?
No. I like your column, Shawn. That's
you didn't even read my column. You said
I don't have time. How much stuff is on flip.com right now? It's like an avalanche.
I know what
I haven't read my stuff.
I like sweet and sour chicken. You brought it in today here now. Marker lunch. It looked good.
Yeah.
It was. It
wasn't my choice, but it was leftover, and I'm a team guy, Shawn. I eat the sweet and sour chicken. You are. Just like Jim Harbaugh is a team guy.
He's just a team guy. He's a good guy. You know what I mean? I found out today why he got into sports writing, which was kind of fun. You liked watching the sports reporters back in the late 80s or early 90s. And so it had nothing to do with sports. It was like, these guys are on TV having fun. And they have
the sports reporters are not about sports.
And they have opinions or whatever, you know what I mean? So, but no, he wanted to go do that or the writing part of it. And it was romantic. I think you're kind of romantic at heart a little bit, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely.
You're totally romantic. So, I sort of am, even though it doesn't maybe ever look like that, but I have it in my heart. No, last thoughts on Harbaugh. I mean, look, we can talk about Michigan in 2 seconds in a second, but just last thoughts on Harbaugh. I understand he can be difficult and quirky, eccentric, whatever. And he was stubborn and he was arrogant at times, but to the right people. That whole phrase, who's got it better than us, is an admission that you're sort of arrogant, right? And that you're kind of elite. So he leaned into the idea that Michigan was one of the best schools in the country. And when he was winning, this fan base, the alums and the fans of the school who weren't alums, they loved him. They loved him for, right? It represented something.
Yeah.
And he knew it was going to upset people. He never worried about any of that. He's very. It's interesting because he can be. I'm not saying he has blinders because I think he's too curious for that. He can be stubborn, but he's also really self-aware in a couple of key
in some ways,
in a couple of key ways that really matter, that allow him to do and be the coach that he is. You have to have a little bit of self-awareness, which is why he constantly brings in people from the outside to try and new ideas. It's like, hey, I need help with this. That's where the self-awareness is to me. Yeah, how he plays in front of a podium, who knows? I don't think he worries about that too much. And we'll see how that works in the NFL. He wore out his welcome to San Francisco, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the question, is whether he can navigate, the challenges of the NFL. And let's be honest, I mean, even though, 9 years in Michigan, so 10 years ago he was coaching, right? 10 years ago, whatever. I mean, the world has changed. People have changed. Players have changed. Social media. We had Matthew Stafford's wife complaining, and that Stafford's 35, and that the kids in the locker room are constantly down looking into their phones, or not, connecting with their teammates. That's going to be, because he's coming from college, he probably understands that a little bit more, the youthful mentality. But it's just a different landscape right now. People have their brands, the players do, all the pressures of, being in that market, by the way. And already the football is not the prominent sport there. And the Rams are the prominent team. So you're the second banana there in your own stadium. The Chargers just don't really have that following. And so it's going to be a challenge for him. And I think there'll be the novelty will be nice. I already got a text from a reporter out there in LA wondering, here we go. We gotta buckle up. The Harbaugh era, it sounds like it's going to be challenging, but maybe fun. And it's different, and then in college also you talk twice a week, and in the NFL you talk 4 times a week, 5 times a week as a head coach. The pressures are different. Does he know football? Yes. Can he navigate within that landscape, within a organization that is going to be expecting a lot, that's never really done much? They really are looking at this guy probably as a transformative coach who can get us to the Super Bowl, who can continue this winning, but it doesn't happen right away. And so how does he work with his general manager? How does he work with the different pressures? It'll be an interesting ride, but it's going to be tough to not have him in Michigan, where I think he was always destined to be.
Yeah, I don't feel that way. I understand the connection. I felt like he came back to restore the program, and then he was going to move. I always felt that it's just how he's been. Mm-hmm. Moved. He always wants the next challenge, the next competition, as you mentioned earlier, how competitive he was. I just never felt like he was going to be a lifer, that he was going to be Tom Izzo or even Bo Schembechler. I think for this generation, he'll be remembered more fondly than Schembechler. Anybody under 40, right? The
Schembechler, the legacy is complicated now. Yes,
it's complicated. No, that he would never won. Even before that stuff with Dr. Anderson, he had never won a national title, right? So that was always kind of
true.
And it's funny. And speaking of complications, and I don't want to go down this tangent very far at all, but just I've always been, because I live in Ann Arbor, and I've been around there. I'm married into a family that has been around Ann Arbor for 70 years, and it's always been interesting, Schembechler's legacy in Ann Arbor, because it's such a progressive, countercultural town, and Schembechler represented the establishment. And there were a lot of folks in town that never cared for Schembechler at all because of what he represented, going back into the late 60s.
But which coach was different back? They were all the same back then. No, Hayes, it doesn't matter.
No, for sure. But Columbus wasn't the protesting hotbed that Ann Arbor was.
True.
There's the SDS, the Students Democrat, the SDS that the Big Lebowski was joking about, or Jeff Bridges was joking about the Big Lebowski. Right? So there were these sort of iconic liberal hippie movement, and here was this coach. There was always tension there. And Harbaugh never had to deal with any of that. I don't know how we got off of that. It just made me, just talking about Schembechler's legacy. Harbaugh's legacy is set with this generation. He won a title, and he can move on, and good for him. We'll see. We'll see if he has any success.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's he's never boring. All right, let's take a quick break, and we're gonna come back and talk. I don't know. There's a football game coming up Sunday. It's kind of a big one.
Yeah, Chiefs Ravens. It'll be cool.
Chiefs Ravens. Can't wait. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlson Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlson Shawn. All right, let's talk about the 49ers of San Francisco, not Santa Clara, and the Lions of Detroit, not Toledo. It's about the
or Portsmouth. How about the Inglewood Rams and the Inglewood Chargers then? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They did play in Inglewood, didn't they? And the Lakers.
Absolutely
used to play at Inglewood, right?
That's
not technically in Los Angeles.
No, it's not.
Well, what about the Pontiac Lions?
You can just see the listeners just like clicking off right now.
No, sorry. All right. What are we talking about? Oh, Lions 49ers, NFC title game Sunday. We listened to Dan Campbell speak. We listened to Ben Johnson speak. We listened to Aaron Glenn speak, not necessarily in that order. They seem, especially Campbell, maybe it's just public and he's trying to instill faith in his team in every way, when he's speaking to us, because he knows some of them pay attention. But they got some confidence, don't they? Let's just start there before we talk about any of the matchups. They got some confidence. He's got faith, doesn't he? There's some belief that they're not just going out there, that they actually think they can win.
Absolutely. How do you not? You won 2 games, 2 playoff games. You beat a pretty good defensive team. a hot team, and both the Rams and the Bucks, yeah, you should have a lot of confidence. And the 49ers are not a perfect team. I mean, you got Mr. Irrelevant throwing the ball, and he was having trouble with it in the rain last week. So, this isn't the, whatever peak or Patriots team or the 72 Dolphins or whatever.
They'd be a little slow.
Probably a little slow. Well, especially right now. They'd be 8 years old or something.
Zonka probably wouldn't even get on the field. He's so slow, right?
Yeah, at this point, 88, 89.
No.
So that it's not an unbeatable team. Do the 49ers have great talent and a pretty sizable advantage playing at home? And, I think so. I think that they do have the advantage here. I mean, they're 6.5, 7-point favorites. Not that means that much, but it's basically people really thinking they're going to win this game handily. But the Lions have, the biggest thing with the Lions to me is their defense has played better. They've really, Aaron Glenn, and they've really done a good job of dialing up the blitzes. And if not sacking the quarterback, putting more pressure on the quarterback. And Baker Mayfield, they're not the same, but Brock Purdy reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield. He can move around a little bit, but they also ask Brock Purdy to do kind of the right thing and not have to do that too much and use his playmakers and get the ball to the McCaffreys and the Deebo Samuels and the George Kittles and all that. So, they are, as you said, they're playing, they're confident right now. They've been playing with confidence. They have all the reason to be confident. So this gives them a chance. This game can go any way, but the Lions right now have a lot of confidence. And if you want to argue the other point, the other side of it is the 49ers got scared by almost losing to the Packers, the 7-seeded Packers, who were obviously playing well, but they playing at home against the 7th seed. I mean, they really shouldn't have been in that game, and some weird things happened in that game, but still, and the 49ers had a little bit of a layoff, but I think they got a little bit scared. That sometimes wakes you up, but this should be a very good game, I think.
I think so. By the way, I came in here, for folks who obviously can't see us, we're in Allen Park in a recording booth. We used to record videos with the great Dave Burkett in here a long time ago.
I don't know who that is, but
yeah, we don't know who that is anymore. He's busy. Who knows what he's doing? Talking to scouts or something.
I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, it's all for you, though. I mean, that's what he's doing. It's all for you. It's all for the listener, the reader. No, he's doing a great job. But I came into this room all ready to argue with you and go back and forth with you, and I don't even remember why. Maybe it has something to do with Harbaugh, and you thought he should stay. I don't know. I thought there was going to be a Lions topic we were going to argue about, but I don't know that we even have that. What is wrong with us?
I had you wriggling in the crushing grip of reason. Once again, there's no way out. So you just have to agree with me. I'm right again.
The crushing grip of reason. He's pat himself on the back. That's not a sincere pat on the back, though. That's more of a mocking pat on the back. And I want to get Carl to the point where he sincerely pats himself on the back, and it feels like he deserves his own pat on the back. That
feels so good.
That's what we're trying to get Carl. So hopefully the mic picked up that sound effect of my hand on your nice corduroy shirt, by the way. No, there's still part of me. I don't know about you, Carl. I come down here and have for the last few days, and it's still a little strange that they're in the NFC title game. It's just, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's been almost 3 years in the making. The Campbells talked about that, right? We saw last year they needed to finish all of it, but it does feel like it came out of nowhere, even though it did not. It's something your brain's trying to square a little bit, and I think that sort of disbelief combined with giddiness, combined with just the anticipation, is what we can feel it all over metropolitan Detroit, right? Everywhere you go, and you're reminded too. I've been going into a few stores lately where you walk in and there's a rack of Lions shirts for sale at a place that would never sell, that doesn't even sell clothing, right? Let alone, you know what I mean? It's just, that's when you know, right? You just, everywhere you go, you see Honolulu blue with lights, and then that's different too, right? I mean, you haven't seen anything like this, obviously, in your time here.
No, I mean, there's been definitely the times where they've been in the playoffs and, returned to the playoffs after a long layoff. I think during the Schwartz era, they did that, especially coming off 0-16. So there was a lot more hope. And there was that's what I probably liken this the most to, is there was finally some hope. And they had Stafford, and they had Calvin, and they had Sue, and
they were young, relatively, right?
Yeah, relatively young. And That's I think what I remember most, this feeling like. But yeah, getting to one step away from the Super Bowl. And by the way, we're right now, I'll tell you, we're in this meeting room. There's like, whatever, 40, 50 people out there. Everybody's looking at Las Vegas flights right now. We're all figuring if they win, we have to book our stuff kind of early and figure out where we're staying and all. There's this sort of logistical thing that we have to go through for road games. The Super Bowl's different. We've never, like Burkett goes there every year, no matter if Lions win or lose.
But
Mitch Albom goes there once.
But he's not fighting thousands of other Detroiters trying to get there.
Yes, and that's the thing with us. And you mentioned about the plane and all that, and that's what's different about this. The schedule is different for the media. There's just a lot of little different things that when you get to the championship round, things change. So that's why probably it feels a little bit different too. Now, I mean, we've seen this since halfway through last year to this year. We saw the team tracking toward this kind of performance. Did anybody predict that the Lions were going to get to the NFC title game, I think, in their preseason predictions? I don't think so.
No.
I didn't. I thought they'd get to the playoffs. I don't know. I think I might have predicted they win the division because I think the Vikings were lucky last year to get there. So, we saw them having some success.
I remember the first, and it's hard to pinpoint one specific. Sometimes you get, hey, when did you know someone's going to turn around, whatever. I just in terms of Carl's sort of metamorphosis, transformation from whatever that was you were doing before. I remember early last year, in the football season, and they were 1-3 or 1-4, maybe. I know they start off 1-6, but they were somewhere in there, 1-4, maybe 1-5. Maybe it was a 1-6 game. I don't remember. You wrote a column saying they're not as bad as this record,
right?
And hey, we're watching something different. I know the wins and losses aren't showing up, but this is different. Give it time. Let's see what happens. And I remember being, whoa, that was impressive.
Yeah.
You were right.
Of course,
and,
as usual. Yeah.
And you wanted to, you wanted to write about what was before you. You looked deep and you saw it, and then you let it all out. And it's funny how that's always stuck with me. No, but seriously, they were 1-6, and I remember you and I looking at each other or talking and sitting in some of those games thinking, this is different. There's something that's different here, and it was hard to say that. I mean, we both wrote it actually, and I remember both of us got mocked. I'm not trying to say I told you so. That's not what I mean. But you've seen that, and this is sort of the culmination, although Campbell's very adamant that this is just the beginning.
Yeah. Well, it's the beginning of maybe this level of winning. But, I mean, I wrote this when they were 3-13, that there was something different about what they were doing.
At the end of that year, right? At the end of that year.
Through that year, I could see it. You could see it, even because they weren't losing by a lot. And if you listen to the coaches, and we have to sit here and listen to all the stuff. And a lot of times over the years, covering football, whatever, some of it just turns into coach speak. We just got to be tougher and more sound and assignment sound, blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of the same thing over and over again. Like, okay, yeah, sure. You can read every week. But what Campbell was saying and Aaron Glenn, Brad Holmes, Brent Johnson wasn't the OC the first half of that first year, but you could kind of see that there was a little bit, they were taking a little bit of a different approach. Campbell's a different coach. And the way that they were making gains that first year, and then certainly this second year, or the second year that they started 1-6, that was all the defense, really. The offense was holding up its end of the bargain, for the most greatly for the most part. And so you could see there's something here. The defense has to be fixed, and it got fixed. So this is what I think what gave me, the confidence to say that the record isn't always there. We've talked about this before in golf. There's something called being ball bound when you're practicing. And it's the difference between having good technique, but not a good result. But this is a good technique. Maybe the ball didn't go exactly where I wanted to, but I felt good. I felt like it hit the ball well, whereas you can chunk a shot or blade it and it goes straight and it goes 150 and like, oh, that's a good result. Well, that's not repeatable. That's a fluky thing. So you don't want that. You don't want to be ball bound. You want to be technique bound.
I don't know whether to faint or to cry or to maybe just go check myself into the hospital. You just talked sports. You just actually talked about sports.
Oh, thank you.
That's amazing.
Wait a minute. Are we supposed to?
That's amazing what you just did. That was great. And that's a great analogy, by the way. And I forget sometimes how much you love golf and know about golf, but that was yeah.
I appreciate that coming from a former features guy.
That's really nice that you laid that out there. That was really. I'm sorry, listener. I'm shocked. But let me.
Sean's having a moment here.
Let me try to be a professional and pull this back together. No. Yeah. So absolutely, what we're seeing, the reason they're in this game Sunday is I take it back to. I mean, you can go back to when they took over, obviously, but I take it back to the end of the first year when they were 0-10-1 and they didn't quit. They kept playing and they won 3 out of the next whatever it was 4 or 5. I don't know, and they didn't have near as much talent on that team as they do now. But I remember thinking, and I think you and I probably even talked about this back then, that was different. The way they finished that season after starting off 0-10-1.
Yeah.
That was a little, like, okay, the way they're getting these guys to play, that says something. Now, we didn't know that they were going to keep finding the talent and making the moves and developing the talent and all that. We really had no idea. But the fundamental thing, the Campbell effect was right there before us at the end of that first year.
Right.
That's him.
That's him. Absolutely.
That's him. And I think that in back to this Sunday, that's what gives him a chance. I mean, hey, yes, Ben Johnson's a fabulous offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn is a really good defensive coordinator who's figured out how to overcome some of the talent gaps on the defense, right? They started to make plays at the end of the games. They're not a dominant defense, but to me, they're kind of an opportunistic defense.
Right.
And the blitzing has really helped, especially from Melifonwu and Branch. Those two guys seem to have a knack for it. And they disguise it well. And
Aiden Hutchinson really helps.
He's been playing his best ball since he got here last year. So, yeah, no, for sure. And they're talented offensively, they're loaded all over the place. Skilled players, offensive line, Goff's playing the best ball he's ever played, all of that. So, no, for sure. But fundamentally to me, Carlos, what gives them a chance is Campbell and what he's instilled in them. And they buy it, man. And who knows? I have no idea what's going to happen. Maybe you do. And obviously you don't have the talent, and they're not even in the game. But Campbell gives them a chance to go, I think, shock some people. Would you be what if they win?
I would be
you wouldn't
mildly surprised
for 2 weeks.
I haven't shaved for 2 weeks.
You'd be so tired you wouldn't shave.
I would be mildly surprised, but not that surprised. I mean, some of these, when you get into unless someone lucks it, if it had been, let's just say if the Packers had beaten the 49ers and the Packers beat the Lions and the NFC title game here, that would be a big surprise and almost a shock to people if they did that. But here, the number 1 seed against the number 3 seed, I don't think this is going to be a shocker either way.
No, and they could have been the number 2 seed if they'd gotten a better break in Dallas, right? So,
right.
So yeah, no, in that way, in the records, they kind of, they're not a Cinderella story. And you think about San Francisco and where they're strong. Yeah. Obviously, the great linebackers, great linebackers, and they can run, and that's going to be a challenge for Sam Laporta for sure. Their defensive line is really good. They get good tackles, their athletic tackles, and their ends are. Bosa's the star, right?
Yeah.
Chase Young hasn't quite given them the production that they've been waiting for. But then you think, okay, well, who are they going up against? Well, Bosa and Young have got to get through Decker and Penei Sewell.
Right.
Right. Sewell is every bit as talented at his spot as Bosa is at his. And we don't think about these lines yet that way, but they do have some dudes.
Yeah.
We need to kind of get used to that idea, right? They got 4 All-Pro guys. It's not
2 first-team All-Pros.
And 2 second-team All-Pros, which is,
right.
No, that's how they do it. There's no third-team All-Pros, just the first 2. You can't just diminish that. That's
Pro Football Reference. That's when and that goes into Hall of Fame, but they don't look at second-team All-Pros, first-team All-Pros. What counts? It's the best of the best, not the best of the second best or whatever. But yes, excellent players, of course. The Lions have them as well. Jared Goff kind of had fun with that yesterday when someone asked him a question about that. And, there are very good players. The 49ers have experience on their side. It's the 4th NFC title game they're in, and they're playing at home. And, I think that they're going to, I think the most The worst thing that could have happened to the Lions is that the 49ers had to be scared a little bit last week because they had a 3-week layoff between games because they arrested their starters in the season.
They did.
Regular season finale.
I mean, I think the weather. I think it was the weather. Purdy struggled to hold the ball. I think that was probably the single biggest difference.
Yeah, they lose Deebo Samuel too. Who knows if he'll play in this game? But they lost him early in the game.
He makes a big difference.
Yeah, they do have a lot of talent.
That'd be like the Lions without St. Brown, right? I mean, that's a big difference.
But that's the thing that I think they got a little shook, in that game. And that's we almost got embarrassed here. We almost got bounced by the 7th seed in our first game. Yeah. And then you call into and then they're facing all the questions of, wow, should you have rested the starters? That always comes up.
No, for sure. But Green Bay went in and just smacked Dallas. And the way they finished the season and the way Love has been looking, anybody that really watches football would
it would
not have been excused. They're fans, whatever. But I'm just talking about the people around the country that know football and watch football. It wasn't. I try to tell people going into that game, Green Bay and Jordan Love is good.
Love.
Well, he's got the skill to be the next great quarterback in the NFC. I mean, we'll see if he gets there or not. We'll see. And they got a really good coach, and they're a young, talented team that got hot at the end of the season. They were a lot like the Lions were last year. Kind of the way they finished. They just happened to get into the playoffs, where the Lions missed out because of a head-to-head or whatever, right, with the Seahawks. So it reminded me a lot of that. The Lions might have done similar damage last year, might have won their first playoff game, and then given somebody else a really good chance and lost at the end. They kind of had that feel too. Anyway, all right. You're heading out when? Saturday,
yeah.
And you're on one of those bigger planes that Delta swapped out to accommodate all these people trying to get out there?
I'm flying private, just on my own plane, Shawn. I'm just going to be going.
Do you and the pilot?
Just me. He lets me fly a little bit.
Okay, good. Or is it 2 pilots? Because it's cross country. You might want 2.
You remember the movie Ford versus Ferrari? Was it Carol Shelby takes over the plane and they're like, that's fine. I flew bombers in the war. Yeah. And they're like, whoa. He buzzes the crowd.
That's nice that you're going to fly private. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. You're going to detour to LA and pick up your shoes?
I already have my shoes. I'm just going to halo drop from about 30,000 feet and just poof, go right into center.
Tom Cruise style. That's awesome. All right, Listen, we're going to get back to work here in Inland Park. We're going to join y'all from Santa Clara, the Levi's Stadium, where the San Francisco 49ers play post-game, and we'll either be talking about, oh my goodness, the first Super Bowl ever for the Lions, or the end of a very good season.
Yeah.
We'll see.
One of the two.
One of the two.
Yeah.
Neither of them bad. So, all right, thanks for joining us. We know who we thank. We thank not Shawn. Do we need to thank anybody else? I don't think so. This is a shorter version of the pod here.
Oh, we can thank Kirkland Crawford and
Coach
all executive producers.
As sports
and Nicole Avery Nichols, who's the most. Can't forget her. She signs the check.
She does. She does. So thank y'all. Thanks for listening. Find us wherever you find your favorite pods. Rate us, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until Sunday night when we're back with more Free Press Sports with the Carlson Show.